let's do something for a moment. I know you had a life from a childhood of abuse and through foster care and wards of the state and prison, and then on top of that, reached the top of the fighting game and became, in my opinion, the best there ever was and will be. You just always have been my favorite fighter, but you're also the guy that you went through every experience and learned something. You didn't just take the experience, but you actually broke it down, figured out things, and learned from it. The fact that you reached the very top of the most competitive athletic sport in the whole world, but behind all of that is a backstory about your life.
Yeah, within 3 or 4 months, they took me from my home, and I became a ward of the state when I was 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll never forget the time. Part of the process is you have to stand up in court and say that you don't want to go home. Build your body, build your mind, build your spirit, keep learning, keep growing.
And so tell us about your story, about the background, who Frank Shamrock was when we didn't know him as a UFC fighter.
Had a few bumps and losses and stuff, but really from that moment on, my career just skyrocketed.
I read on the front end that people will hear just the number of championships you won, the competitors you've fought, the things that you've achieved and done. And Frank, it's amazing. It's almost like you just kept going to the top. I mean, you just kept moving through where a lot of people, the contenders will stay in the top 10 for 10 years and never move up. You just kind of went through all of them and kept going. And there's got to be a difference between somebody who's good and all those good competitors and those that reach the level of greatness. And that's what I want to ask you about too as well. Tell me about the mental game. How much of it, of the fighting game and success in anything, is mental?
It's all mental.
Really?
The whole game, all of it.
Yeah.
The whole thing. Because
really,
if you pause, if you hesitate, if you haven't had the experience, any of those milliseconds at that level, will cause you to lose. And most of these fighters, I've sat in the corner of thousands of fighters and coached them and executive leaders, and it's those little moments of doubt. It's those little moments where they haven't made the commitment. And I've been very successful because I made the commitment. I stayed up late. I got up early. I reread the text. I drew pictures. I did the things that weren't cool. I was the first fighter with a notebook. And I used to be teased. They'd be like, "Oh, what do you do, brainiac?" And they would all tease me. Yeah, because nobody else had a notebook at the time. They thought it was you're a tough guy. You don't need a notebook. But it was during my time in prison where I was able to spend all that time alone and sort of learn who I was. And I wasn't educated, so I got educated. Right. I didn't have a good study habit, so I developed that study habit. And what most people do when they achieve fame is they get rid of all those things that built them. They're like, I got all these people doing stuff for me. Yeah. But I kept all those things in place, my desire to learn, my desire for excellence, my desire to build my body and care for my body. And it was really, I say, lost in life, go to prison. It'll straighten you right out. Like you get all the time in the world to figure out who you are, what you need to do. Yeah. But it was really that time of personal reflection and then personal change where I was able to say what was important to me and then make that my commitment. And, I do the same today and anything any task that I undertake, I do the exact same process. I try to figure it out. I build a great plan. And then I put these stages of commitment in there. And that's where, I see all of my guys that I coach. They're like, "Oh, well, I went out Friday night." And I was like, "Well, did you study?"
Right. Yeah. That was the thing I noticed with you. That was you were the first time I actually ever saw you. I'd heard of you, and that was years ago. And my boys were real little at that time, but I got them into watching it. And I'd joke with you. I've even told you before about how if they got in trouble, I'd say, "Boy, I will Frank Shamrock you so fast." And you were the guy I watched. But I tell you what intrigued me was two things. Just the first time I saw you, they showed you in the dressing room. You know how the camera goes in and looks at it. You've got this big fight, and I even told my boys, I said, he's going to win. And they were saying, how do you know he's going to win, Dad? And I said, just look at him. You were, I'll call it, mentally relaxed, and I guess you were physically prepared, but now your mind, you just appear to be mentally relaxed. And where you proved it was, when you'd be on the bottom, you were known as sometimes you were as good from the bottom as you were from the top. You could fight on your back, and I noticed you never panicked, you never wilted, you never shriveled up. Even in that position, your mind was still in the game, and so that mental side to you was the part that I wonder, when you were in that dressing room before the big fights, what was going through your head? Did you prepare yourself that way, or what did you think about then?
Well, for me, once the work was done, I was in a place of peace and calm. And so, when people see me in the dress, I would turn the lights off and take a nap. For me, it was about, prayer and meditation and really, I knew what the job was. Yeah. And I was already prepared. So, people all would laugh because I'd kick everybody out. I take a nap. I make everybody meditate and then pray. And then I'd go out and fight. And they'd be like, what are you doing? Yeah. But that's, as I've come to learn, like that's the best process, is to have everything done, to fully commit to it. Mm-hmm. And then, to find a place of calm and to find a place of, relaxation, because you perform the best when you're relaxed, when you're calm, when your mind's clear. And where a lot of people, fall down is they don't experience those stressful moments ahead of time. Mm-hmm. They don't put themselves in the bad position. So when they get there in the fight, and it's a times 10 situation, they don't know how to act or react, or, they don't even know what their body's going to do. Yeah. So I learned early on, like, put me in the worst position possible, and let me figure this out. Let me build some confidence here. And so that's why, I seem so relaxed and comfortable, as I'd already experienced all that stuff, both in my body, through technique, and then through visualization. I've already experienced it in my mind. Yeah. So I knew what to do. Yeah. And knowing what to do in certain situations, or any situation, will will totally make you calm. Excuse me. Yeah. So those are, and then I make everyone pray.
That's you're right. That's now another. What about? You had another part that I have not mastered like I should. I can imagine and dream, but I feel like you have reached it in such a level that there's stuff to learn from. Just visualization. How a couple of little things you'd mentioned one time when you were a child in abuse, and we didn't talk about that, but you were actually put in a closet at times, and yet you would envision being a champion one day. And then when you became a fighter, you envisioned how it's going to work when you fought Kevin Jackson and when you fought the Russian guy, and you beat one in 16 seconds, one in 22 seconds, but you'd kind of already seen that. What do you have to have, or what do you do, or how do you open up that door of visualization? What's your process?
Well, for me, it's understanding. So once I sort of understand what the game is, what needs to be accomplished there, then I start the process of kind of the building blocks of creating it. And so when I was a kid, I didn't have any tools to create. I just had these dreams. Right. And so I dream myself into these things. But as I got older, especially, through working out and through martial arts, I realized, you can create anything if you can see it in your mind, because the whole thing is in your mind anyways. Yeah. So my process is to understand what I'm trying to accomplish, and then to just slowly build on that. We talked about writing. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of drawing. I do a lot of reading. Every time you put pen to paper, every time you absorb in your brain, you put building blocks in place. It doesn't matter what you're trying to learn or what you're trying to accomplish. You can put those building blocks in place. Right. Once you have some commitment to that, and you have some, sketch or outline or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, then I recommend the visualization process. Right. And that visualization is actually seeing what it is. Yeah. And seeing it in your mind, creating it in your mind, whatever it is. You want a new relationship, you want a new business, like it doesn't really matter what it is. If you're slowly building up to it, then your mind can actually see it. Right. And then when you're visualizing things, your mind makes these connections to the work that you've done. So your mind goes, oh yeah, that's right. There's a block over here and there's a block over here. And so you have support for the vision. And then, the next level of that, Bill, is if you do that before you fall asleep,
Right.
you will actually dream about your vision. And it's in your dreams that you can actually look at yourself as a third person and be like, this is odd, I'm in a dream. But wait a minute, here's the vision.
Yeah.
And you can see things outside of your conscious ability inside of those dreams.
Yes.
So every night when I go to bed, I meditate, I pray, I start visualizing, because that visualization, those pictures in my brain actually lead to the dream.
Yeah.
And then in my dream, I'm like, oh, wait, we're still here. It's still happening.
Yeah.
But I can see it from different angles and different perspectives. And sometimes I'm a character. Sometimes I'm a third person. Sometimes it's me and I'm looking around going, wait, we're in the vision. But it's having and building that mental connection.
Yeah.
And that comes from the work.
Yeah.
Whether it's, like I said, note-taking, drawing, reading, whatever you consume in your brain becomes what your brain sees.
Yes.
So if you're consuming those small building blocks or those segments to your vision, to your dream,
right,
then, you'll achieve them.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. I love the fact about even before you sleep, it's almost like your subconscious mind, what you're saying, it sounds like is like your search engine on your computer. It starts searching even while you're sleeping to solve that problem, align everything. Wow.
Yeah, and that's how I won all them fights so quick, Bill. Is I was able to be, a third person in my dream because, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm praying, I'm visualizing, and then I'm all of a sudden dreaming about the techniques I was doing earlier in the day and the things I was studying earlier in the day. And sometimes everything would mix. I'd be at the supermarket. Some guy would pick a fight with me, and I'd be there watching me in the fight. But my brain is still trying to solve the technical issue of the thing. So I would be able to look at the situation like, this is really odd, but here's what you should do. And then I'd wake up and be like, oh, this is what I should be doing. Because your brain never turns off. It's like a supercomputer. And we dream to process all these things, to line these things up and to sort of defrag the computer. But you can actually guide that as part of your visualization. So that, meditation, prayer, visualization, and then lead that into a dream. And you'll literally be watching your future in front of you.
Yeah, that is, you're helpful to so many folks, me as well on that. But that's part of what you've done is too, it's like, I call it personal growth. I started growing when somebody years ago put a book in my hand. I went through school and I had a photographic memory. I could remember what I'd seen somewhere and I could imagine. But when somebody put a book in my hand about 25 years of age, all of a sudden I read it and I saw where a guy who had nothing went somewhere, and that intrigued me. And I got into learning about leadership and things like that. With you, I've seen the personal growth has been something that, I don't know if you do it now intentionally, but I guess it was a hunger back then, but you're always learning, always trying to apply. Never content with just leaving it as it is, but saying, okay, that was good. How do we make it better? Do you reflect on things and experiences like that and try to collect all the information you can from it in order to do that?
I do. And, I've had so many unsuccessful experiences. I got a lot of, things to sort of mirror on. But for me, it's really come down to mentorship. Guys like Bob, even, guys like Ken, business people where, they see somebody thirsting for knowledge. I'm not afraid to raise my hand, ask a dumb question, bring a notebook out. And I go back to those, aha moments. And use them in my teaching, use them in my personal development. But I also believe that, studying history and human interaction is so important. Because we're the same being, that we were, thousands of years ago. We still have the same, inclinations and actions. And when you can understand, how people acted and reacted in the past, you can help guide both yourself and your community in the future. So I'm a huge believer, and every life experience builds your experience. So good, bad, win, lose, like everyone is important. Otherwise, you'll never get, to that destination you want to get to personally, or even socially. because everyone is a little tiny building block. And I've learned more in my losses. And like I said, going to prison was probably the best lesson of my life.
Right.
And where it really crystallized for me was I was sitting in Corcoran, level 4, maximum security prison. You know, where the murderers, like Charles Manson was 1 yard over, like like as deep as you can get. And I was sitting there and I was having these reflective moments, and I looked out on the yard and I saw like 4 guys that I used to hang out with. They were with me in all these institutions and stuff. And all of a sudden I realized if I kept doing what I was doing, I was going to be just like those guys. That this would become my life. I would be in prison. I would be a convict for the rest of my life. And I was like, that's not who I want to become.
Wow.
That's not it. Yeah. So I went, whoa, I got to be different than these guys. I got to start building to become somebody else. And that's where I began my journey for education, for knowledge. But you are only what your experiences have made you.
Yeah, that's right. When you learn, you're right. You remind me how you went so far. I made a statement the other day about a guy that somebody called me and said, this guy quit on my team, and he said he just walked away and quit, and I'm so mad. And I flippantly said this, and after I said it, I said, that's a good title. You know how we say he went as far as he could go? My word to him was, I said, well, he went as far as he could grow. And I got to thinking, that's true of a lot of us. You went as far as you could grow in the MMA world. You went to the very top. When other people, either the pain or the pressure or the privileges they got when they got known, the popularity, something took them off track. Frank Shamrock just went as far as he could grow and walked through all of it. And what I love, the people may not know this, you were the UFC champion. You defended it now all these times, undefeated. And after you win the big bout with Tito, you lay the belt in the ring and say, okay, I'm out of here. And I said, if anybody finished well, you went right up there and walked off and said, all right, give me something else. I love it. You went as far as you could grow there. And I don't think the organization was growing at the level that you were. You were ahead of it. Yeah. You've always been. And I will say this, and, they may not like it. I've always said, I think there are a lot of good guys in the UFC's Hall of Fame, but it'll never be considered legitimate or respected until you're in there. I mean, you did everything and taught many of the people that are in there. And that's just and I know you're like, look, if they want to recognize it, fine. If they don't, I know who I am. But for one of us, your fans and the people that love you say, we can't ever give it all of the respect we would like to until your name is in there. So, because that's who you are. You grew. Let me ask you about one other thing, too. This is what, it helped me, and then you did it one time, early on in my life. When I became a Christian, I went back and saw all the people I had wronged, and I wrote a list. I went back and tried to make amends. And though nobody told me to do it, I just knew that was my past and baggage that I didn't want to carry forever. And you had done the documentary, Bound by Blood, because you and Ken had a separation, and there was even a time that he could have said it to anybody else. You can't say it to you, but he said, you'll never be a champion and all that. Well, you say that to you, that's like red meat to a dog. And you went on, and though you were separate, you became the world champion over and over and beat everybody, became the legend. But then there came a time that you wanted to go back and try to reconcile relationships. Tell me about that process, what it did for you. Was it a cleansing? What it meant for you, getting past your past or making peace with it? How did that go about, and what do you recommend to people doing that?
Yeah, well, what is it? What do they say? Drink poison and hope someone else dies. That was that was me for many years.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until I retired, because I had such a focus on my success. It was required of me to really put that attention on there. And then once I retired, I realized, I still have these emotional angst. I still feel uncomfortable. I still have these resentments.
Yeah.
And so it was during the first few years of my retirement that I started looking for that amends. Like, how do I get rid of these feelings inside of me that are poisoning me? Mm-hmm. They're not poisoning the other guy. They're actually making me feel uncomfortable. And so I started that process. The movie was one of them. I ran that law enforcement business for a decade because as a criminal.
Yeah.
I felt genuinely bad about all the things that I'd done, because I didn't do them to hurt people. I did them
Right.
because I was a knucklehead and I thought I had the system figured out.
Mm.
So I've made a persistent effort to try to get rid of those feelings, the negative
Yeah.
ones, or if I've
Yeah.
harmed somebody, because it is so cleansing. Like it is,
Mhm.
it is so powerful to yourself to be in a
Yeah.
place of peace and calm, and to be
Mhm.
of value and of service to society. But you can't be of service if you're carrying around these bags, if you got people that hate you. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it was a focused process for me
Yeah.
in healing myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that. It would take that space you had in your heart and life and say, okay, I just cut the anchor to that. I'm not held back by it. Now I'm free to put something else in those places, but I did my part, and I respected that so much. And I thought, man, that is the wisdom and what you did by that. I can see how that keeps you from staying or living in the past. You've always been, I've done that, and let's move on to the next. I read an article the other day about you. It was in Risen magazine, where at the end of it, the guy asked you about your faith, and I was really pleased when I read that. By the way, I'm honored. The other day when we talked, and you said, I call you my pastor, and you're my spiritual guy. Frank, I promise you, I didn't sleep for 2 days on that. I called my son Brent. Frank called me his pastor. And so, I love it. And I said, man, I'll claim it to the world because I just love you. I mean, I see a guy who is as authentic and as genuine, who's willing, warts and all, to say, this is where I've been, where I'm at, what I'm going, but this is what I learned, and if you need some help, this is how you do it. When you talk about your faith, you mentioned about the homes. Each one had a little Christian background, and then Bob was a Christian, and then how that you relied on God and you pray, and the journey of your life now, if you look at it, you've seen what God's done. Tell me about your faith and your connection, your prayer, and what God means to you along that line.
Sure. Well, God is, fills my heart. God is love. In my opinion, I was raised to survive on the streets,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a godless place.
Yeah.
People are trying to kill each other. Like, there is no love amongst humans out there because there's no time for it.
Mm.
But you're going on this journey. Total strangers stop their life to try to help me, and they did it because of their faith in God.
Mm.
And that just had such a powerful, effect on me all throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once I finally made it to a position of value to society,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that, sharing that faith and sharing that power is one of the strongest things I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 100% a Christian. Like I believe in this God. I believe in the power, and, even larger, like, there's a reason why we love each other, because, I wasn't brought up in love. I wasn't brought up in a place of, that intimacy that God gives you. It just didn't exist for me. So I had to find it, and I found it through total strangers whose faith guided them to come help me.
Yeah.
And that has opened up my heart and opened up my faith and desire to just be a person with love.
Yeah.
And that's the strongest gift I believe that God can give us.
Yeah.
And that's where I think this generation can benefit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're right. Now that also does something for you, along that line. I didn't want to leave without talking about that for a second. I'm amazed at your parenting, your father skills. I watch you with Nicola, your daughter, and just how much you're gentle and kind, and you teach, but she knows she's got a dad that's got a bond. It's like God wants to have with His children, but maybe the absence of not having a father in your life made you see how important that was. What is parenting? Is that one of the biggest joys you have?
It is the biggest joy of my life, more than anything. And I've turned down, $1 million jobs because I got to be there for school, and I got to be there for this, and I got to be there for that. And it really wasn't until I'd achieved all that success that I was able to say, wait a minute, now what's important to me? I achieved the goal. I'm not on the streets. I made it.
Yeah.
It was really then that I was able to, sort of look at my life and say, well, what is the most important thing to me?
Mm-hmm.
And it was what I was missing when I was a child.
Yeah.
And it was having good, quality parenting, strong role models,
Yeah.
a present father, like somebody to guide me,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's the biggest commitment I have. I just love it. I think that parenting is, the biggest role you can play in your life,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to guide somebody else and an entire generation to the next, level. And having a girl was, God's wake up call to me. He's like, all right, here you go. She's going to have children and you're going to be the architect of that. Just like Bob Shamrock was for me. And the things that Bob taught me, his faith, his belief, his love, no matter what I did, he would stand there and be like, all right, son, well, here's how you screwed up and here's what you need to do. And just those simple, acts of being present and sharing that love with me as a parent. We're not related in any way whatsoever. No blood flows between us. That man is my father.
I love it.
Because he stopped to give me that love. So if I could do the same for my daughter, I speak at middle schools. I mean, I go a lot of places and I share my story. But, the end of the story is God has given me this life so that I can guide this next generation. And that to me is the most powerful thing. I love being a parent, man. I just, it's, I do hair. Like I'm all in. I
can tell. And that's the, and it's really that old lesson. I say this sometimes, give the best to the people that are going to cry the deepest at your funeral. Don't neglect them in doing other things. And what you've done, I just noticed a relationship. I have a grandson that has autism. And when you were with us a while back, here in our city, I mean, we all went to dinner one night and you didn't even know. We had just learned about a week earlier he had autism, and he was a little rambunctious. And my wife noticed, she said, "Do you notice how Frank went over there and sat beside him and said, 'What are you coloring here?' And just began to talk to him. And his spirit was so rested and he was trying to communicate back with you. We later learned about his autism, but she picked up quickly. She said, because she had an abusive father, she picked up quickly. She said, "Did you notice how he reached over to that child and just had a relationship?" That's what I respect about you, Frank, is that you just got, I guess having lived that, you said, I'm gonna change the course. I'm gonna provide I'm gonna break the cycle, and I'm gonna be a father and a grandfather one day that I can look at and say that's my best trophy of all.
And it really is. It really is God's gift. You could do, I've accomplished great things, but the real measure of a person is how they parent their children, in my opinion. Like that is really, because that's God's plan. The rest of it is whatever you can do with your time. But
that's right.
That to me is how we should live our lives.
Yes.
And I've a lot of the dads are like, "Oh, you do hair?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm learning the French braid. Like I'm down." Because that's a moment, that little girl is going to remember.
Yes.
And she's going to look back at that and be like, "Yeah, my dad did my hair." Like,
yes,
we have that thing. And so that's my biggest, I just love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever.
I'm with you. I had 3 sons, and I remember, and I didn't have a father as like yours, but I remember an old guy told me one time, he said, my boys want to go hunting. And he said, "Bill, if you go hunting with your boys, you won't ever have to go hunting for your boys." Yeah. And that made me say, okay, I'll get up at 4 a.m. and go sit in a tree with them if that's what they want. But to this day, they've all turned out to be good people and well productive and all, and could trust them with your life. And I'll still Frank Shamrock them, but they, but they turned out well because of that connection. And that's what I connect with you about that so much. Now, let me ask you this. I want to promote your book also, Uncaged. I tell folks, go to it, read it. I promise you, you'll have to read it 2 or 3 times to be able to get it all in, but Frank's lived the life. And then the other is, you're always on some calls. I noticed you there's a time you were building homes, places, and in places I'd never even heard of. I had to get a map out on one. So where is he at now? You helped your friend and really made an awareness about mental health, and then you got with the cause of bullying. What are you doing right now, and how can any of our listeners support and be aware of that cause? What can we do?
Sure. Well, right now we're doing women's self-defense programs for battered women. That's one of our main pushes. We're still working on our Truth About Mental Health series, which is kind of in our mental health area.
Right.
We've made a lot of progress in kind of pushing this stigma about mental health to the side and sort of, bringing it to the forefront. All of this you can find at shamrockway.org. That's our nonprofit that operate in Bob Shamrock's honor. Right. And we're still doing our house builds, although we're just waiting for this pandemic thing to pass by. And our next one is we're going back to Natuashish, which is in Newfoundland, Canada. Wow. Yeah, the northernest point in North America.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful tribe up there, the Innu Nation, which has been displaced, and they're having all these social issues. So we're going to rebuild a house for them in hopefully this next year. And then we still continue with our digital, education program. So our latest one is a book called Lessons in Cadence, and that's about 7 military service and law enforcement officers that are telling their story about mental health.
Oh, wow.
And it's been just powerful.
Yeah. Gosh. Look, man, I hope our folks take advantage of that. So shamrockway.org, and then they can also follow you on social media.
Or frankshamrock.com. And then you can always hit me up on social media. And I don't know if you heard, but we're doing a book about veterans. And that one is called Lessons in Cadence, and you can find that at lessonsincadence.com. Very powerful, very powerful book, but designed to help educate people and also to get military professionals and law enforcement officers to help share their story. Yeah, I still live in a community where you don't really talk about that type of stuff, but talking about it, sharing it, finding common threads. We all have the same fears. We all have the same angst issues, and when you can put those in words, they often help people. They certainly bring down stigmas, and we're finding it saves lives.
I love it, and I see a lot of it here. We're near Fort Benning, Georgia, so it's that large military infantry place, and these young guys will go off and go to war. When they come back, they're different. Their spirit or their mind, they go away. Pastor, pray for me, and I'm excited. I'm gonna go serve my country, and when they come back, they just are not the same, and they want to be, but something happened, and so I think you got a great window of opportunity to help some folks there, Frank.
Yeah, I agree, and we're pushing the boundary of like I said, the stigma on mental health. We're getting closer and closer, so a lot of people are starting to talk about it, and we find talk therapy, just sharing that, getting it out, is one of the best things that you can do. Yeah.
Frank, I've enjoyed it today. Thank you. I'm grateful that you would take the time and come on this broadcast with me, and it means the world to me. And I want you to know if there's anything I can ever do for you anytime, all you got to do is call. All you got to do is ask.
I sure appreciate it, Bill. Anytime, buddy.
I hope you enjoyed part 2 of Bill's conversation with world champion MMA fighter Frank Shamrock. And if you missed part 1 and you would like to check that out, make sure you click this button right here. Or if you would like to watch other videos that we've got on our channel, you can click this button. And you can subscribe if you have not already by clicking this round button right over here. We're glad you tuned in, and remember that this is where real leaders are made.